And just like that, we are back with our very last episode in our math series. My name is Kayla Durkin. I'm the host of the Let's Talk Teaching podcast that you're listening to right now. And today I'm going to be talking to you all about using math talks in your middle school classroom. It just seems so fitting to sum up all of the different strategies, all of the different tips that we've shared over the past 6 weeks, and end with my absolute favorite thing to do in my middle school math classroom. You've heard of them, but you're maybe not quite sure what they are. You see people talking about them or you hear people talking about them, but you're not really sure how they would work for you. And that's totally okay. We are all in this together. So today I'm sharing with you all about math talks or number talks that you can use in your middle school math classroom. I personally use these with my sixth graders and they were phenomenal. So you're going to learn how to use these number talks in your math classroom, how to implement daily math talks, and how to make daily math talks for middle schoolers effective, because that's what's important, is that it needs to be effective. So let's dive into just a little bit of background knowledge. So at the point when I started using these number talks in my middle school math classroom, I had been teaching for 5 years. I'd taught fourth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade math, pre-algebra, geometry, consumer math, and a math intervention class at that point. And of those 7 classes, there's just one thing that all of my students had in common, and it was that they struggled with math fact fluency, conceptual understanding, mathematical reasoning, and even their confidence in math. No matter how many math fact fluency worksheets my students had done, no matter how much time they spent on extra math, no matter how many little incentives I did to get them to work towards their math fact fluency, they still struggled with their math facts. They could go through the entire math fact fluency test and pass it, but then it's like 3 days later, we're in class trying to apply these skills we just mastered, and their minds were blank. They just couldn't do it. So that summer, while I was gearing up for my first year of teaching, I knew that something had to change. I had been putting my heart and soul into every single one of my students, doing everything I possibly could to help them be more confident as mathematicians, but something was missing. I remember it clearly. It was really late, honestly. It was probably like 2 or 3 in the morning because, as teachers, sometimes we just lay in bed thinking about all of the things that we want to try and do, all of the ways we want to try and help our students, and ideas come to us at the most random times. So my husband was fast asleep, and there I was trying to figure out what I could do for my next group of students so that I could change the entire way that they approached math. And it suddenly hit me. Now, again, this was the summertime, so I'm just laying there in bed. I remember listening to a professor in college briefly mention the idea of math number talks, but I didn't recall the professor ever going into details as to what they were or how they worked. So, cue the middle of the night research party, of course, trying to keep my phone brightness down so that I didn't wake up my husband. But I started reading these articles, journals, research studies, everything I could to gain more information. And I was hooked. I knew this is exactly what my students needed. So after spending some time trying to find what I thought would work best for my students and for my classroom and coming up unsuccessful, I decided, okay, I just need to take this into my own hands, because honestly, who knows better about what a classroom teacher needs for success than a classroom teacher? So, this is what I had to do. You're probably thinking, okay, I've been here, I'm listening to you, Kayla, but I still don't really have a clue as to what math talks are, why it's necessary, or how they're going to work for me and my students. So, first things first, a number talk takes a relatively simple problem. It has students work through the problem mentally, and then it allows time for discussion, reasoning, and problem solving. Number talks help with math fact fluency, mathematical reasoning, number sense, and so much more. So, when we're talking number sense is the conceptual understanding of a number and their relationships. It's more than just knowing what an answer is, but knowing why that answer is. Number sense helps students think flexibility about math and gain confidence in their mathematical practices. So, to kind of give you the big picture, a number talk on average shouldn't last more than 7 to 10 minutes. And this is why I used it as the warm up for my students as they were coming in the door. And why is this important? Why do we need to be doing this? Because it helps our students gain that mathematical confidence. It encourages collaboration and social skills. Students will gain conceptual understanding of mathematical concepts. They're going to develop fact fluency and gain some of those memorization skills that are so important. It'll deepen their mathematical vocabulary. It's going to help teach them to persevere and go through productive struggle. I think we talked about that on Mona's podcast. And it's going to help them develop that mistakes are proof they're trying mentality. One of my favorite things is that number talks are perfect for all students, no matter what grade you're in. But I'm just giving you the example of middle school because that's what I was teaching at the time. And so math talks are great for any age of students. I know there are teachers in kindergarten who are using math talks. I actually sell some kindergarten math talks in my Teachers Pay Teacher store, and kindergarten teachers love them. They are such a hit. And then I know teachers all the way through high school and even college use number talks too. So as soon as students are beginning to develop number sense is as soon as you should begin implementing these number talks. Although my number talks are formed around middle school standards, the one specifically that I sell for middle schoolers, these could also be perfect if you have upper level classes that you're teaching or even college level students who are struggling. I think we all know teachers who are teaching today and they struggle with math skills. I actually just saw the funniest reel ever, and it was a reel of this teacher saying, "My parents are so proud of me because I have a double master's degree." And then it shows her pulling out her sparkly princess calculator to add 7 plus 8. And I know so many people who are totally like that. They need their calculator to calculate 7 plus 8. We do not want our students to be like that when they get older. And that is why we want to use math talks in our classroom. So how do we implement these? Okay. Well, the most important part of a math talk or a number talk, I know I'm using those interchangeably, but the most important part is setting a tone for classroom community. That is the foundation of everything in teaching, is having that community. So we want to be sure that all students know that this is a safe space, that all students are welcomed and encouraged to participate. And of course, like with anything in life, the first few times a student gets an answer wrong, they're going to have a wave of emotions, embarrassment, sadness, disappointment, whatever. This is why the classroom culture is such a huge part of this. Be sure that you take time during these wrong answers to build the student up who is brave enough to share their thoughts. I am always going to be positive statements such as, "Wow, I loved your thought process. It was so cool I am so impressed with how you approached this." Although they got their answer wrong, hopefully we are still filling their buckets enough that they want to share again and again and again. So, what does this process look like and how is it going to work for you? Well, in my classroom, this process usually lasts 7 to 10 minutes at the very most. But first things first, it comes with presenting the problem. Now, I always had the problem presented as my bell ringer while students were coming in. I like to greet my students at the door. So, this gave me an opportunity to have something ready for all of my students to work on while they were all coming in. I'm greeting everyone, I'm taking attendance, I'm doing whatever I need to do. And then, as soon as all of those little to dos are done, then we can start by having our students share their answers. But first things first, project your PowerPoint or project it on your whiteboard, whatever you want to do. You can print it individually. This could happen at your small group table, whatever. Just find a way to present your problem and make sure you give everyone enough time to solve it. For me, it depended on the problem, anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. We're just giving them some silent, protected time to solve this problem mentally. Now, here's how I knew when my students were ready. I like to use hand signals. My hand signal was simply just a thumbs up sitting on their desk, so they could put out a thumbs up if they wanted to read a book or work on something else while they were waiting. That was totally appropriate, totally fine. I always just reminded them, make sure you don't forget your answer. So they would give me the thumbs up, they could pull out their book, and then we would just wait for everyone else to be ready. Again, no longer than 1 to 3 minutes. This step is just important because we want students to have the opportunity and the time to solve it. We don't want to rush anyone if we don't have to. We really just want to give them the opportunity to develop skills to be able to efficiently and accurately use their mental math and problem solving skills to make sense of their reasoning without needing to use the standard algorithm. A lot of students would go through productive struggle, especially because this is something that's being done mentally. It's just so important that we give students time to think through how they are going to solve this using multiple methods too. Sometimes I would always say, okay, if you've solved it in your head one way, now I want you to think through how could you solve this in your head another way. And then we're using that special hand signal or that motion to show that students are ready. We really want to choose a hand signal that is not going to be distracting to anyone else in the room. That's why I simply used a thumbs up signal to show, yep, I'm ready. I have my answer. I am ready to go. So when students aren't distracted by their peers, they are more likely to spend more time coming up with multiple solutions. I know for me, if someone was sitting next to me, like kind of wiggly and crazy and whatever, because they have their answer and they're really excited, that would distract me. And that would probably keep me from having the opportunity to solve the problem. So we really want to make sure that our students are not distracted by those who are around them. We really just want to give them that focus time so that they do not give up. Once we've given an appropriate amount of wait time, now it is time to start getting out some of the answers that our students came up with. It's really important that first we pull out the answers they come up with before we share how they got their answers. So for example, you might call on a couple students, what'd you get? 12, what'd you get? 17, what'd you get? 26. Maybe you're writing them on the whiteboard. Maybe they all have markers and they're going to come up one at a time and quickly write them on the whiteboard. Maybe this is something that happens on sticky notes. It really doesn't matter. You just want to take an opportunity to get a few of the answers that students came up with. And again, we don't want this to take too much time. At most, this should take 1 to 2 minutes. So I think I forgot to say this. I'm giving my students 1 to 3 minutes to solve the problem mentally. And then I'm taking 1 to 2 minutes to start just pulling out some answers of what they got. And then from there, we're going to take 2 to 3 minutes to share how they got that answer. There are so many different ways you can do this. Again, you can call on a couple students. You can have these students do some turn and talk to share with a partner. One of my favorite things to do was to have students do a turn and talk, and then I would call on a student and have them share what their partner got as their answer, because those are just good communication skills as well, to have the student have to listen to what their partner got and be able to share what their partner got. And then we don't have to hear from every single student, but every single student still got an opportunity to speak and share their thoughts. Oh, and one thing I actually forgot to mention is as you're writing up all of those answers, it really is important that we focus on all of the answers, even if some of the answers are wrong. And what I'm saying is when you're writing them on the whiteboard, when you're coming up with the 17, the 26, the 25, whatever, it's so important that we focus on all answers as a whole and collectively. And then when it's time to share the hows, if you know that students made a particular mistake and that's how they came to those incorrect answers, it's really important to have those students share their thinking too, so that we can use that as an opportunity to positively correct the mistake that they possibly made, or even say, I see that maybe we missed one step, or I see that something maybe went wrong there. Can anyone help us? Can anyone see what we're missing? Can anyone jump in? And this is just a great opportunity to all students to participate in this process. At the very end, then we'll maybe just wrap things up with 1 or 2 minutes and say, okay, tell me what is still confusing to you. Tell me what isn't making sense yet. Do you agree with this? Do you disagree? Why or why not? Can someone explain this to me in another way? Are we noticing any patterns? Will this always work? It is just so important that we give students an opportunity at the very end to share the misconceptions that they still have, or to share why they're still not getting it. That way you can either use that time right there if you have it while you're in the moment, or maybe pull them back and do a reteach when you're getting into your small groups or whatever it is, but just an opportunity to answer some of those questions that students still have as well. So again, this doesn't take long. It's 7 to 10 minutes at most, and it's just so effective in helping those students gain confidence, take ownership, build some of those collaboration and social skills. It helps with that fact fluency and rote memorization depending on the problems that you're doing. So let's talk about some of those problems right now. At the very beginning of your number talk journey, I think it's really important to not necessarily start with a problem that's going to stump your students by any means, because first things first, we just want them to get into the routine of doing these number talks or these math talks daily. We just want them to get used to the process first things first. So put up some problems that are going to give them a little bit of confidence. For me, with my sixth graders, I definitely started with the year with some addition and subtraction. Then we move into multiplication. Then we move into division. You kind of get the point. So for addition, I mean, super simple. We might start out with honestly like a 2-digit plus a 2-digit, which maybe sounds hard, but for sixth graders, if we start out by saying like 27 plus 25, you are going to get a lot of answers that are 52. You're going to hear some students say, well, I added 25 plus 25 because I knew that 27 was 2 away from 25. And then at the end, I took that extra 2 and I added it back on. So then I had 50 plus 2, and that's how I got to 52. And then let's say we did a subtraction. Now we're moving into multiplication. Maybe you have something like 17 times 9 that you're putting up on the board. You're honestly going to have students do this in so many different ways. Some students are going to say, well, I broke the 17 up into 10 plus 7. So then I had 10 times 9 and 7 times 9. And then I had 90 plus 63. And then I added 90 plus 63 and I got 153. Oh my gosh, I hope I said that right. I'm going to have to check that after this podcast. I am just pulling these numbers out of thin air. So I really hope that answers 153. You might have other students say, okay, well, I knew I was taking 17 times 9. So the first thing I did was I knew the number was 17 times 9. So I broke my 17 into 10 and 5 and 2. So I had some really easy numbers to work with. I had 10 times 9, and then I had 5 times 9, and then I had 2 times 9, and then I added those all up. You might have some students say, well, I know that 17 is 2 away from 15. So first I did 15 times 9, then I did 2 times 9, just so many different things. You might even have students say, I probably should have started with this one, but you might have students say, I know that 17 times 9, 9 is 1 away from 10. So I did 17 times 10, and that gave me 170. And then since I added one on when I was taking it times 17, that means I had to take 17 away. So I had 170 minus 17 equals 153. So just so many different ways that students can share their thinking. But again, this is all happening mentally, starting with easier problems that can give them a little bit of confidence. Then after a few months, you might move into some word problems, working with decimals, some negative numbers, some variables, any other topics that you are focusing on at the time. Again, I like to look at the standards that I'm covering in my math class, and that's kind of how I pick out the ones that I'm using. And then when we get around to some of that state testing time, I really like to pull out some of those probability numbers, some of those charts and graphs, and really things that are going to help us prep for state testing as well. So I know this was kind of a fast overview. If you are looking for more, I do not have a ton of videos on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is probably one of the saddest channels you'll ever see in your whole entire life. But in 2019, I think it was, I had some really nice bright brown, oh, not brown. I had some really nice bright blonde hair. I had this awesome tan going on, and I created a number talk YouTube video. So if you want to watch that YouTube video, go to ndteaching.com/YouTube. You'll be taken straight to my YouTube channel. And if you are looking for the number talks that I use with my students in my middle school classroom, again, these are appropriate for 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, maybe even 5th grade. Honestly, if you are looking for number talks that are appropriate for you, please go to my Teachers Pay Teachers store. Again, that one is North Dakota Teaching as well. I do have kindergarten number talks in there as well. I know that teachers have used them with their first graders too. So some options there for you. It's just so great to be able to have these conversations in our classroom. So I hope this kind of gave you some ideas to use with your students. I absolutely love them. I think it just pulls out so much more information than we would typically get from a typical bell ringer or just a typical way to start our math classroom. So I love it. I hope you love it too. And with that, that concludes our 6-week math series. I hope you loved it. We have big, big things coming in the next couple weeks. Oh my gosh, I am so excited. I can't even explain it. This is honestly my favorite time of year because something big happens in March every single year as of 2020. So 2020 was the first year, 2021 was the second year, and here we are, 2022. It is the third year in a row, and it's all about launching the Blossoming Teacher course, which is a support program for first-year teachers. So this podcast over the next couple weeks, we are going to transition and we are going to be sharing teacher tips for first-year teachers. But as always, I try to make my podcast as inclusive as possible, tips that work for all teachers too. So I really want you to come back and continue to listen to this series. But if you know new teachers, teachers who are student teaching right now, bring them on over, send them the link, share this with them. Let's invite as many teachers as possible to get in on all of these teacher tips. And then just get so darn excited with me that the Blossoming Teacher course is going to be accepting new members into the program beginning on April 22nd. And we are going to have our kickoff party starting on June 1st. So you are going to get tons more details in the coming weeks. I absolutely cannot wait. It is my favorite time of year. So hang on, friends. You are in for another wild ride. Thank you so much for being here. And with that, I will see you next time.